Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. I wanted to take a couple minutes today to talk about the Japan versus Russia question. This is the one pet peeve that I have about the Global 40 game. That's what we're looking at here is the Global 40 board. Um, I love this game, but this one question that bothers me because it just seems like Japan, there's no way they could have possibly have walked across Asia and invaded Moscow, but yet in this game it's really not that difficult. It takes you a bit of time to get that far, but you don't experience the hardships and the terrain that you normally would. Excuse me. So I wanna show you, like I've been looking online and looking at maps and everything and satellite images, and I'll show you why I don't think that it could have ever happened that Japan could have marched on Moscow, moving across Asia. So you look at the bottom here, the Himalayas, and this is impassable. It says here it's impassable. But the Himalayas, even though they're right here, that that's just what they called the Himalayas. This mountain range extended right along the border here, all the way up, and then eventually it became the Ural Mountains, and it goes right up to basically the end of the board there. On this side here, this is considered Europe, and on the other side, this is considered Asia. And that's what the continental divide is that mountain range there. It's a massive mountain range, and just like the Himalayas, it's virtually impassable. I mean, you could get through there just as you could get through the Himalayas, but to move an army through there is ridiculous. In fact, the Tankograd, you might have heard of that. That's the tractor factory that they repurposed to build tanks. That was somewhere in here along the Kazakhstan border. And it wasn't just the tractor factory. There was actually 3 factories in here where they did most of the production for the heavy equipment that the Russians used in the war against Germany. And the reason they located it back here was because it was safe. That was the safest place. It was well away from the Germans, well behind the lines, and they had no worries about the Japanese ever coming through there. It wasn't just because they had a non-aggression pact with them. I mean, that could have been violated at any time. It's just that the Japanese could not have made it through those mountains with an army. Um, People did go through there throughout history. The Silk Road, it went. There was 2 routes. There was a southern route and a northern route, and I don't know if this is exactly where they were, but because an Axis and Allies map doesn't look exactly like map that you would find with the countries displayed on it. Up in here, this was a huge desert in this territory up here that people along the Silk Route, the merchant traders, they'd get lost in, or they'd starve to death or die of thirst. So he could make it through there, but to march an army through, I mean, it would take some time to do that, and it is so far from being likely that it's virtually impossible. And even the road, it went through part of Mongolia, so you would have had to, if you took the Silk Road, you would have had to have gone through Mongolia if you took the northern route. Anyway, I'm going to move the camera. I want to show you the top of the map up there. So before the war began, there was before World War II began, there was a war that happened, a small war that happened between Russia and Japan, and it was in here. It was along this border here, and it didn't last very long, but that was the biggest reason why there was a non-aggression pact between them. The Japanese had fought the Russians once, and they had no interest in doing it again. And the plan that the Germans had, and what they'd hoped that the Japanese would go along with, was that Germany would do their Barbarossa operation and attack and move towards Moscow, and that Japan would attack along the border here. Now, Germany never had any thought that Japan could have made it back to uh, could have ever made it to Moscow. In fact, they wouldn't have wanted them to. They wanted Moscow for themselves. But there was 1 million Russian troops along this border, and what they wanted to do was to keep them occupied so that they didn't go home. And during the game, we start with these things here, and a standard move is to move them towards like down the Siberian Railway, which was along here, somewhere around here, and move those back towards Moscow so that they could take part against the Germans. And the reason that Germany wanted Japan to attack there was so that those troops wouldn't leave. And but the Japanese chose differently. They chose instead of attacking there, they chose to awaken the sleeping giant in Pearl Harbor, and we all know how that ended for them. But the standard move for a lot of players is to move these troops, and that's what there's a game going on here. That's what I've done. They've made their way along where the Trans-Siberian Railway would have went. Now you wonder, okay, so why couldn't the Japanese have used the Trans-Siberian Railway? It was not a very reliable railway to begin with, but you could use it. But the thing is, I mean, all you would have had to do if you were the Russians is take your trains and get them out of there. Then Japan would have had to come across the water with their own trains, bring their trains, transport them to wherever the tracks were, put them on the tracks, and then how easy would that have been for the Russians to stop that? I mean, how many? There must have been a ton of railway bridges along the way. Wait for that first train to get there, and then blow it up while it was on there. Like the cost that the Japanese would have had to pay to do that, and then to lose it all would have been a game changer for them. They wouldn't have made it as far in the war as they did if they'd have chosen that option. So if they had gone along the northern route instead of trying to get through that mountains as I showed you earlier, that would have taken a long time. That is almost 10,000 kilometers to get to Moscow from the coast over here in Amur. So, I mean, that they might have got there after the war ended, and you can imagine how that conversation might have went between the Russians. Is there anybody here from Hiroshima or Nagasaki? Show of hands. Yeah. Sorry about your luck, but your cities were vaporized. No, it wasn't us. It was the Americans. But it's time for you to leave now, and if they would have left, let them leave. But the trek along there, you couldn't have supplied them, so they probably would have got there without any bullets left. They couldn't have made it there with their mechanized units because they couldn't have gotten any gas along that route. They wouldn't have had any bullets left though because they would have had to shoot animals along the way just to eat. And like a fraction of them would have made it in the end, and even if the war wasn't over, the Russians would have kicked the crap out of them when they got there. It's kind of ridiculous how in this game you could actually do it and not even be winded by the time you got there. The one thing that I thought might be a good way to change this rule is to force them to go through Mongolia, through here, and this is a strict neutral territory. And as you know, if you know the rules of the game, that if you violate one strict neutral territory, then all of the strict neutrals on the board will be like if it was Japan, they're an Axis power. If they had violated the strict neutral territory, then all of the other strict neutrals would have become pro-allies. Now, as an allied player playing the allies, I could accept that. Sure, go ahead and march to Moscow. It's going to take you a while, and all I'm taking the guys in Turkey and Sweden and Spain. All those guys will be mine. I just got to walk over there and get them, and I could live with that if you could. And I could accept that if I was the Japanese player, that there's going to be some cost to it because the going through the mountains south of Mongolia would have been impossible, and going through this northern route and the number of years it would have taken to get there and freezing to death. It just okay, I'll take that role where I can go through Mongolia. that's just one idea, but like you could get around that too, because all Japan would have had to do was attack the Russians, and then the Russians would get Mongolia because of the Mongolian rule, and then it wouldn't be a strict neutral anymore. It would be a Russian territory for all intents and purposes, and the troops on there would be Russians. So it wouldn't be violating a strict neutral by doing that. Um, so I don't know that you could do that unless you change that rule, but I don't want to change a whole lot of rules. I just want to make it impossible. Um, like Japan should be able to attack here. I mean, they're standing right there, but I mean, there should be some point along the way where you say, okay, well that this is now impassable. You couldn't possibly get past this point here. You couldn't supply it, and it just you wouldn't be able to do it. Um, uh, that's what I think on the north here. But the way I've always played, and the way it should be, you could do the Mongolian thing like I said, and then the other option. I just want to move the camera here. Is this is something that is doable. Um, Let me set it up right here. So the game that you can see right now, this we're nearing the end of the fourth term. We didn't get a chance to play anymore this weekend because everybody was busy, but Japan is on its way down here. They're going to attack India. So this is the Indian subcontinent down here that you get below the Himalayas. So this is not impassable. So you attack India and you take this out, and then you're in the Middle East. You wouldn't want to go here because that's a strict neutral, and then you're going to activate the other strict neutrals on the wrong side of you. So you could get to the Middle East, which you would want to do to get the oil, and then you could go north to Russia and head up to Moscow. That would be acceptable to me because that's normally what could have happened. Not only that, but the supplies wouldn't have been impossible because, assuming that you could make it that far, you've probably secured the sea zones down here as well. You could supply, you could bring ships right over here and supply troops as they make their way north. I mean that could have been possible to do that. So it's not that you shouldn't be able to attack to conquer Moscow as a Japanese player. You should just have to go around to do it. That's what I think. Uh, you shouldn't be able to just walk across the top there through the frozen tundra over many winter seasons, or across the mountains that unless you have a Klingon battle cruiser, drop a couple of photon torpedoes on Tankograd on your way to Moscow. I mean that would have worked, but that's just as ridiculous as being able to walk across there in the wintertime. So that's what I think about that anyway. Really, it doesn't matter what I think, and it doesn't matter what you think. Though what really needs to happen is that Larry Harris needs to make a rule for this for us, or to change this rule, because this is not two boards, because I've got Young Grasshopper's map here, and it's a great map, but this is where the board is right along this line here. That's where the Pacific map met the Europe map, and I could see how that would have happened. I mean, you made the Europe map, and this wouldn't have been a question, and then you made the Pacific map, and that was just that was another game, and that wouldn't have been a question. But when they put them together, it's like he said, okay, well, let's put some troops over here, and that should take care of it, and it doesn't take care of it. It's like I said, it's the pet peeve that I have about this game, and it's not hard for me. He doesn't have to recall the games and change the rule book and everything, and then send them all back to us. The rules have been changed before for other Axis and Allies games, and for this game, just simply by putting out something on the internet and saying, okay, this is the way I want you to play now. Institute this rule. You can call it the Silk Road, and say you can go through Mongolia, or say you can attack Russia, but you got to go through the Indian subcontinent. That would be fine too. But do something though. Admit you made a bit of a mistake there, and we all make them, and just let's make a rule that actually works for this game. Anyway, that's what I think. So have a good day.